To show just a quick technique you can do for making a really simple little pot. So what you need is a small ball of clay, maybe no more than about the size of a satsuma, and you want to pat it into a nice round shape. So start it off so it's really nice and round before you start, so not too lumpy. And then what you need to do is put the clay in the palm of your hand, and you can then press with your thumb into the clay, and you want to push down until you're about half a centimetre away from the base of the clay, so you don't push your thumb all the way through, but just so that you can feel that your thumb is there through the other side of the clay. And then you make what is called a pinch pot. So you start to pinch the clay, and you use a sort of pinching movement like this with your thumb and your hands, just squeezing the clay between the two as you turn the ball of clay. So I like to have the clay on its side like this so that I can see what I'm doing. And you just rotate the clay, just squeezing as you go so that you can make the nice even walls. Now what you don't want to do is squeeze too much up here at the rim. You want to leave that nice and thick to start with. But if you start at the base and work your way up to the middle, you can start to see that a pot's developing. You can also see there are lots of cracks. Now what happens with the clay when it's quite dry is it will start to crack like this, and every now and again you want to stop and have a look at it and find where there are cracks, and then smooth them over fairly firmly with your thumb. Just move the clay across any big cracks so that they don't develop into anything bigger. Just smooth that clay across so that you get a really nice smooth surface for you to carry on with. Particularly want to pay attention to any cracks that appear around the rim, because they will just keep on opening up as the clay goes around, because it will get dry as you're handling it. So I'm back to squeezing now, pinching the clay between my thumb and my hands, keeping this sort of claw movement going. Now what can happen is the clay can tend to flare out into a kind of more of a bowl shape than a pot. So you want to make sure that your hand isn't kind of pulling the clay out like this as you go round. So you want your hand to be as if you're sort of coaxing the clay to stay inward, to keep coming in. So as you're squeezing the clay to make it thinner, it's not widening the rim too much. So there's another crack opening up, so I'm just going to smooth that over, make sure it doesn't go any further. Just keep that rim really nice and smooth. Watch out for any other cracks down the base. And then I can carry on. And you can take your time over it. The more you spend time feeling where there is a thicker bit that you can just smooth out, you can get a nice, smooth, even finish all the way around. Still keeping the rim nice and thick. And the reason for that is that the rim can crack very easily, as you can see. And the thinner it is, the more the cracks will open up. So you want to make sure that that's the last thing that you work on as you go round. So here I'm still doing that pinching movement, but I'm actually stroking it on the inside with my thumb, and that's helping to smooth out as I go, so that I'm not making too many sort of strong indents in the clay. And it's also helping to deal with any of those troublesome little cracks opening up. So there we go. So I've got my rough pot. Could do with a bit of refining, but we can do that later. So what I want to do now is do the rim. So now we're ready to thin the rim out. I can just start to move my thumb up to the top of the pot. I'm still doing that kind of pinching and stroking movement, holding it on its side. Sometimes if you hold the pot upwards, it's harder to keep the clay upright. It tends to pull the clay out more. So you can work with it upside down, but I like to work with it on its side, and just stopping every now and again just to smooth out the lines that appear. So you can spend quite a bit of time working away on that, making that into a really nice, smoothed out little pot. Just all the time look again at those little lines that are appearing and making sure they're not going to open up too much. And now I can start to bring that rim up. You can see I've actually swapped around. I've got my fingers on the inside and the thumb on the outside, and that's going to help me straighten up that rim as I thin it out. And this clay is quite dry. The clay you have might be a bit wetter, a bit softer, so you might find it's a bit more floppy. You want to work with clay that's quite firm. If it is really floppy, then don't worry, just leave it for, do half of the pot, leave it for a little bit, let it firm up, come back again when it's firmed up a bit more. So it's a fairly rough pot at the moment, but you can see it's starting to take shape. It's going to be a little cup. Now it's got quite a wobbly rim. You can leave it like that. People quite like the wobbliness of it. Or when it's firmer, you can take a little craft knife or kitchen knife, and you can cut around the top so that you can smooth it out and get a nice even rim. But you need to wait until the clay is not too floppy, otherwise it becomes quite difficult to handle. So if it's really floppy, just leave it to dry for a little bit. Keep checking on it, make sure it's not dried out too much, but you want it to be quite firm. So I'm just smoothing out again, checking on those little lines appearing. But I can leave that now, dry for a little bit before I work on it a bit further.